On March 19, 2007, Polina Malkova disappeared from the sandbox in her yard in Krasnoyarsk on Pavlova 47A. Her parents, Olga and Valerie, let her go for a walk alone. They realized after half an hour the child was not in the sandbox. The parents hoped to the last that the girl was alive. The police searched the girl's neighbors, who could be involved in her disappearance. For 10 days, the search did not stop. The whole city, a large number of local residents, volunteers, cadets and relatives of the girl joined in to help. A day later, the whole city already knew about Polina's disappearance. The girl was put on the federal wanted list. People searched places near her house day and night, nearby forests and ravines. Volunteers pasted flyers with a photo of the missing person, distributed orientations to passing people. For 10 days, Polina Malkova's parents lived with the hope that they would find their daughter alive. The terrible news came to the city on March 29. In the Leninsky district of Krasnoyarsk, the lifeless body of a girl was found at the bottom of a sand pit near her home. Investigators collected biomaterial from her body and began taking DNA tests from residents of the region who had previously been convicted of abuse, as experts found that Polina had been taken advantage of. On March 22, 3 days after the disappearance of the girl, operatives raided the apartment of one of the former inmates for abuse. We interviewed him, talked to his wife. The woman assured that her husband was sitting at home. The policeman left. And the most interesting thing is that almost exactly a year later, this man will be accused of taking Polina's life. It is clear that on March 22, the operatives could not conduct an examination. The body has not yet been found. But on the 29th, when the body was already found, why did the investigators not come to the apartment to this man again? Why didn't they send it for examination?
Hey, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You have to subscribe to the channel and like it so you don't miss new videos.
This question was asked to the head of the investigative department at the regional prosecutor's office far more than once, and it was probably the most difficult for him. We took tests and carried out an examination of hundreds of people, the investigator sighs. It's a huge job, it seems obvious now. And then everything was different. Then, by the way, different people came to the police with a painful desire to become famous and confessed to the crime against Polina Malkova. One spoke so convincingly that he was even arrested. And then, when the operatives began to conduct an investigative experiment, the arrested man began to get confused in his testimony. The real criminal was living a very ordinary life at that time. Worked. Asleep. Ate. I was watching TV. Only a year later, the DNA sample matched Naumov's genetic material. His closest relatives created an alibi for him, which allowed him to take the investigation in the other direction. We were forced to go back to the beginning. We checked more than 900 people out of those 3,500. Everyone was processed anew, said the head of the Krasnoyarsk Territory Police Department, Alexander Gorovoy. The criminal did not even try to leave the city and lived all this time literally a few hundred meters from the place of Polina's disappearance. On March 24, 2008, Vladimir Naumov was arrested. Wednesday, March 26, 2008, it was the third day after the arrest of a suspect in the massacre of 5-year-old Polina Malkova. Before the eyes of journalists, a car appeared in the courtyard of his house. Several policemen jumped out of it, a man in handcuffs between them. A cap is pulled down deep on his forehead. During the interrogation, the man confessed and told everything as it was. On March 19, 2007, Vladimir saw a girl in the sandbox. She was playing alone. Vladimir did not lure Polina with anything special. I just suggested walking down the street. The girl was very trusting. She put her palm in the hand of an adult uncle and followed him. The geek brought the child to his apartment, and he literally lives in the house opposite. He took Polina's life on the same day when the girl was abducted by him. The crime was committed in his apartment in the Kirovsky district of Krasnoyarsk. The man first took advantage of her, and then took her life, afraid that she would tell about everything. Prior to the arrest, the suspect was confident that he did not leave any biological traces when committing the actions. And only thanks to the incredible efforts of geneticists it was possible to determine the genomic code of the suspect. When the journalists went up to the floor to talk to their neighbors, one of them suddenly wanted to talk to them. "We went to the same school with him, but I graduated from the 8-year school 3 years earlier," said Yuri Shestakov, a neighbor from above. "He was very quiet at school, too. I didn't do sports, I wasn't friends with classmates, in principle, and did not bully. The lessons were over, I went straight home, almost didn't walk." Yuri said that 15 years ago his neighbor had already been put in prison for coercion. The girl he attacked lived in the house of Polina Malkova. She was only 8. He was friends with a girl Katia at that time. She was even pregnant by him. They wanted to play a wedding. But Katia, when she found out what he had done, immediately abandoned him and had an abortion. He did this to a child for the first time at the age of 18. Vladimir served his sentence in the 31st Krasnoyarsk colony. It is located in the village of Industrialny. He was convicted in 1992, for coercion in 1991 of a girl who was 8, if you count. Now the victim is already 24 years old. Vladimir was only 18 years old at the time. After reading his criminal case, to be honest, the hair stands on end, and half of what he did, you can't just voice it here. In 2004, Vladimir was released on parole. In the colony, he behaved roughly, had 10 incentives, and the court could not find sufficient grounds to keep him behind bars. Polina Malkova's parents, after the news that the criminal was caught, seemed to withdraw into themselves. If earlier Valerie and Olga willingly communicated with journalists, then later they stopped picking up the phone and did not open the door. You can understand them. They found out that for a whole year they lived next to the man who committed such an atrocity with their daughter. "We haven't been called yet," says Valerie. "We generally learned about the arrest of the criminal from the media. The investigators did not call us. I never could have thought that he lived very close to us. We probably met, maybe he came to Polechka's funeral. I'm sorry, it's very difficult for me to talk about this. I can't believe that this is the same person," Olga says. "Polina disappeared on March 19th, and on the 20th we were in the apartment of this very person who has now been caught. We were looking for Polina on our own then, and the janitor said that a suspicious type convicted of coercion lives in this apartment. He opened the door for us with his wife. We didn't see anything suspicious then. But that's not all." The criminal also admitted that in 2006 he committed a similar crime, although he was not among the suspects in that episode. It was committed in 2006. Naumov met a 6-year-old girl on the street, took her away with him, promising to show the animal, took her to the garages and used her. After that, he did not take her life, bought her chocolate and sent her home by bus, while paying for the fare. It was not possible to catch him, because from shock the girl could not properly remember and describe the appearance of the criminal. On November 6, 2009, the regional prosecutor approved the indictment and sent a criminal case against Vladimir Naumov to the Krasnoyarsk Regional Court. The forensic examination found Naumov sane and accountable for his actions. The case was referred to the court. After that, the criminal began to deny his involvement in the crimes and demanded that his case be considered by a jury. At the trial, he tried to give himself an intelligent look, put on glasses, said that all the evidence was fabricated and he himself was a victim of the negligent attitude of investigators to this criminal case. However, when the court questioned his wife, and she reported that she was not at home that day and she did not know what her husband was doing, the defendant's behavior immediately changed. The jury found Naumov guilty on all counts. On May 24, 2010, the Krasnoyarsk Regional Court found Vladimir Naumov guilty of forcing the girl in 2006 and Polina Malkova, as well as of her abuse. The criminal was sentenced to life imprisonment, currently serving his sentence in the correctional colony, Black Dolphin. Relatives, and in particular the spouse who gave false testimony that her husband was with her at the time of the abduction, did not incur any responsibility. A documentary was made about this story, from which many fragments for this video are taken and which I recommend you to watch if you are interested in this story. Many facts are told in more detail. The genotype of the beast from the cycle, Criminal Chronicles, by themselves, the disappearance of children, unfortunately, is not something out of the ordinary for Russia. To make sure of this, it is enough to open the Missing Persons section on the website of any regional department of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. For example, in the corresponding section of the website of the Moscow Police Department, you can offhand find messages about the long and unsuccessful search for many missing persons. Some can be found alive, some unfortunately not, and some cannot be found at all. I had a video on my channel about Lisa Chernova, where a criminal was found and convicted, but there are a lot of questions in the case that no one is going to answer Lisa's mom. We should also mention the deaths of 5 boys in Krasnoyarsk. Their charred bodies were found in a sewer in April 2005. How they got there and what happened, no one knew. For a long year and a half there were examinations. In order to accurately identify the children and establish the cause of death, research abroad was required. Naumov was checked for the involvement of the deaths of 5 boys, but they could not prove it. If you want to hear more about this case, be sure to write in the comments.